Quo Vadis, Chapter 7, Second Part. Happy, said he, are my eyes which see thee, happy my ears which hear thy voice, dearer to me than the sound of the lutes or the citharas. Were it commanded me to choose who was to rest here by my side at this feast, though Ligia or Venus, I will choose thee, divine one. And he looked at the maiden as if he wished to sate himself with the sight of her, to burn her eyes with his eyes. His glance slipped from her face to her neck and bare arms, fondle her shapely outlines, admire her, embrace her, devour her. But besides desire there was a gleaming in him, happiness, admiration, and ecstasy beyond limit. I knew that I should see thee in Caesar's house, continued he. But still when I saw thee, such delight shook my whole soul, as if a happiness entirely unexpected had met me. Ligia, having recovered herself and feeling that in that throng and in that house he was the only being who was near to her, began to converse with him and ask about everything which she did not understand and which filled her with fear. Whence did he know that he would find her in Caesar's house? Why is she there? Why did Caesar take her from Pomponia? She is full of fear where she is, and wishes to return to Pomponia. She will die from alarm and grief were it not for the hope of Petronius, and he will intercede for her before Caesar. Vinicius explained that he learned from Aulus himself that she had been taken. Why she is there he knows not. Caesar gives account to no one of his orders and commands. But let her not fear. He, Vinicius, is near her and will stay near her. He will rather lose his eyes than not see her. He will rather lose his life than desert her. She is his soul, and hence he will guard her as his soul. In his house he will build to her, as to a divinity, an altar on which he will offer myrrh and aloes, and in spring saffron and apple blossoms. And since she was a dread of Caesar's house, he promises that she shall not stay in it. And though he spoke evasively and at times invented, truth was to be felt in his voice, because his feelings were real. Genuine pity possessed him, too, and her words went to his soul so thoroughly that when she began to thank him and assure him that Pomponia would love him for his goodness, that she herself would be grateful to him all her life, he will not master his emotion, and it seemed to him that he will never be able in life to resist her prayer. The heart began to melt in him. Her beauty intoxicated his senses, and he desired her, but at the same time he felt that she was very dear to him, and that in truth he might do homage to her as to a divinity. He felt also irresistible need of speaking of her beauty and of his own homage. As the noise at the feast increased, he drew nearer to her, whispered kind, sweet words flowing from the depth of his soul, words as resonant as music and intoxicating as wine. And he intoxicated her. Amid those strange people he seemed to her ever nearer, ever dearer, altogether true and devoted with his whole soul. He pacified her. He promised to rescue her from the house of Caesar. He promised not to desert her, and said that he will save her. Besides, he had spoken before at Aulus only in general about love and the happiness which it can give. But now he said directly that he loved her, and that she was dear and most precious to him. Ligia heard such words from a man's lips for the first time, and as she heard them, it seemed to her that something was weakened in her, as from a sleep, that some species of happiness was embracing her, in which immense delight was mingled with immense alarm. Her cheeks began to burn, her heart to beat, her mouth to open as in wonder. She was seized with fear because she was listening to such things. Still, she did not wish for any cause on earth to lose one word. At moments she dropped her eyes, then again she raised her clear glance to Vinicius, timid and also inquiring, as if she wished to say to him, "Speak on." The sound of music, the odor of flowers and of Arabian perfumes began to daze her. In Rome it was the custom to recline at banquets, but at home Lygia occupied a place between Pomponia and little Aulus. Now Vinicius was reclining near her, youthful, immense, in love burning, and she, feeling the heat that issued from him, felt both delight and shame. A kind of sweet weakness, a kind of faintness and forgetfulness seized her. It was as if drowniness tortured her. But her nearest to him began to act on Vinicius also. His nostrils dilated, like those of an eastern steed. The beating of his heart with unusual throat was evident under his scarlet tunic. His breathing grew short, and the expression that fell from his lips were broken. For the first time, too, he was so near her. His thoughts grew disturbed. He felt the flame in his veins, which he tried in vain to quench with wine. Not wine, but her marvelous face, her bare arms, her maiden breast, hidden under the golden tunic, and hair from hidden in the white folds of the peplus, intoxicated him more and more. Finally he seized her arm above the wrist, as he had done once at Aulus, and drawing her toward him, whispered with trembling lips, "I love thee, Galina, divine one." "Let me go, Marcus," said Lygia. But he continued, his eyes mist covered, "Love me, my goddess." But at that moment was heard the voice of Acte, who was reclining on the other side of Lygia. "Caesar is looking at you both." Vinicius was carried away by a sudden anger at Caesar and Acte. Her words had broken the charm of his intoxication. The young man, even a friendly voice, will have seemed repulsive at such a moment, but he judged that Acte wished purposely to interrupt his conversation with Lygia. So, raising his head and looking over the shoulder of Lygia at the young freed woman, he said with malice, "The hour has passed, Acte, when thou didst recline near Caesar's side at banquets, and they say that blindness is threatening thee. How then canst thou see him?" But she answered as in sadness, "Still I see him. He, too, has short sight, and is looking at thee through an emerald." Everything that Nero did roused attention, even to those nearest him. Hence Vinicius was alarmed. He regained self-control and began imperceptibly to look towards Caesar. Lygia, who, embarrassed at the beginning of the banquet, had seen Nero as in a mist, and afterward occupied by the presence and conversation of Vinicius, had not looked at him at all, turned to him eyes at once curious and terrified. Actor spoke truly. Caesar had bent over the table, half closed one eye, and holding before the other a round polished emerald, which he used was looking at them. For a moment his glance met Lygia's eyes, and the heart of the maiden was straight with terror. When still a child on Aulus' silicon estate, an old Egyptian slave had told her of dragons which occupied dens in the mountains, and it seemed to her now that all at once the greenish eye of such a monster was gazing at her. She caught at Vinicius' hand and frightened as a frightened child, and disconnected, quick impression passed into her head. Was not that he that terrible, the all-powerful? She had not seen her though, and she thought that he looked differently. She had imagined some kind of ghastly face with malignity petrified in his features. Now she saw a grey head fixed on a thick neck, terrible, it is true, but almost ridiculous. For from a distance it resembled the head of a child. A tunic of amethyst color, forbidden to ordinary mortals, cast a bluish sting on his broad and short face. He had dark hair, dressed in the fashion introduced by Otto in four curls. He had no beard because he had sacrificed it recently to Jove, for which all Rome gave him thanks, though people whispered to each other that he had sacrificed it because his beard, like that of his whole family, was red. In his forehead, projected strongly above his brows, there remained something Olympian. In his contracted brows, the consciousness of supreme power was evident, but under the forehead of a demigod was the face of a monkey, a drunkard, and a comedian, vain, full of changing desires, swollen with fat, notwithstanding his youth. Besides, it was sickly and foul. To Ligia um, he seemed ominous, but above all repulsive. After a while he laid down the emerald and ceased to look at her. Then she saw his prominent blue eyes, blinking before the excess of light, ghastly, without thought, resembling the eyes of the dead. "Is that the hostage with whom Vinicius is in love?" asked he, turning to Petronius. "That is she," answered Petronius. "What are her people called?" "The Lygians. Does Vinicius think her beautiful? I array a rotten olive trunk in the peplus of a woman, and Vinicius will declare her beautiful. But I thy countenance, incomparative judge, I read her sentence already. Thou hast no need to pronounce it. The sentence is true. She's too dry, thin, a mere blossom on a slender stalk. And thou, O divine esteemest the stalk in a woman. Thrice and four times art thou right. The face alone does not signify. I have learned much in thy company, but even now I have not perfect cast of the eye. But I'm ready to lay a wager with Tylus Senecio concerning his mistress, that although at a feast when all are reclining, it is difficult to judge the whole form thou hast said in thy mind already, too narrow in the hips. Too narrow in the hips, answered Nero, blinking. On Petronius' lips appeared a scarcely perceptible smile, but Tullius Senecio, who till that moment was occupied in conversing with Vestinius, or rather in revealing dreams, while Vestinius believed in them, turned to Petronius, and though he had not the least idea touching that of which they were talking, he said, "Thou art mistaken, I hold with Caesar." "Very well," answered Petronius, "I have just maintained thou hast a glimmer of understanding, but Caesar insists that thou art an ass pure and simple." "Have it," said Caesar, laughing and turning down the thumb, as was done in the circus in the sign that the gladiator had received a blow and was to be finished. But Vestinius, thinking that the question was of dreams, exclaimed, "Medici! But I believe in dreams, and Seneca told me on a time that he believes too." "Last night I dreamed that I had become a vestal virgin," said Calvia Crispinilla, bending over the table. At this Nero clapped his hands. Others followed, and in a moment clapping of hands was heard all around, for Crispinilla had been divorced a number of times, and was known throughout Rome for her fabulous debauchery. But she, not disconcerted in the least, said, "Well, they are all old and ugly. Rubria alone as a human semblance, and so there will be two of us, though Rubria gets freckles in summer. But I admit, pure Scalvia," said Petronius, "that thou couldst become a vestal only in dreams. But if Caesar commanded, I should believe that even the most impossible dreams might come true." "But they do come true," said Vestinius. "I understand those who do not believe in the gods. But how is it possible not to believe in dreams?" "But predictions?" inquired Nero. "It was predicted once to me that Rome will cease to exist, and that I should rule the whole Orient." Predictions and dreams are connected, said Vestinius. Once a certain proconsul, a great disbeliever, sent a slave to the temple of Mopsus with a sealed letter which he would not let anyone open. He did this to try if the god could answer the question contained in the letter. The slave slept a night in the temple to have a prophetic dream. He returned then and said, I saw a young in my dreams. He was as bright as the sun and spoke only one word, black. The proconsul then, when he heard this, grew pale, and turning to his guests, disbelievers like himself, said, Do ye know what is in the letter? Here Vestinius stopped, and raising his goblet with wine began to drink. What was in the letter? Asked Senecio. In the letter was the question, What is the color of the bull which I am to sacrifice, white or black? But the interest rose, but the narrative was interrupted by Vitellius, who, drunk when he came to the feast, burst forth on a sudden, without cause, in senseless laughter. What is the keg of tallow laughing at? Asked Nero. Laughter distinguishes men from animals, said Petronius, and he has no other proof that he is not a wild boar. Vitellius stopped halfway in his laughter, and smacking his lips, shining from fat and sauces, looked at those present with as much astonishment as he had never seen them before. Then he raised his two hands, which were like cushions, and said with a hoarse voice, The ring of a knight has fallen from my finger, and it was inherited from my father, who was a tailor, added Nero. But Vitellius burst forth again in unexpected laughter, and began to search for his ring in the peplus of Calvia Crispinilla. Hereupon Vestinius fell to imitating the cries of a frightened woman. Nihidia, a friend of Calvia, a young widow with the face of a child and the hands of a wanton, said aloud, He is seeking what he has not lost, and which will be useless to him if he finds it, finished the poet Lucan. The feast grew more animated. Crowds of slaves bore around successive courses, from great vases full with snow and garlanded with ivy. Smaller vessels with various kinds of wine were brought forth incessantly. All drank freely. On the guests, roses fell from the ceiling at intervals. Petronius entered and entreat Nero to dignity the feast, with his own before the guests drank too deeply. A chorus of voices supported his words, but Nero refused at first. It was not a question of courage alone, he said, though that failed him always. The gods knew what efforts every success cost him. He did not avoid them, however, but it was needful to do something for art, and besides, if Apollo had gifted him with a certain voice, it was not proper to let divine gift be wasted. He understood even that it was his duty to the state not to let them be wasted. But that day he was really hoarse. In the night he had placed leaden weights on his chest, but had not helped in any way. He was thinking even to go to Antium to breathe the sea air. Lucan implored him in the name of the art and humanity. All knew that the divine poet and singer had composed a new hymn to Venus, compared with which Lucretius' hymn was to the howl of the yearling wolf. Let that feast be the genuine feast, so Canrilla shall not cause such tortures to his subjects. Be not cruel, O Caesar. Be not cruel, repeated all with the sitting ear near. Nero spread his hand on sign that he had to yield. All faces assumed that then an expression of gratitude, and all eyes were turned to him. But he had to command first to announce to Poppaea that he will sing. He informed those present that she had not to come to the feast, because she did not feel in good health. But since no medicine gave her such relief as his singing, he will be sorry to deprive her of this opportunity. In fact, Poppaea came soon. He'd her too. She had ruled Nero as he had been her subject, but she knew that when his vanity as a singer, a charioteer, or a poet was involved, there was danger in provoking it. She came in therefore, beautiful as divinity, arrayed like Nero, in robes of amethyst color, and wearing a necklace of immense pearls stolen on a time from Massinissa. She was golden haired, sweet, and though divorced from two husbands, she had the face and the look of a virgin. She was greeted with shouts and the appellation Divine and Augusta. Ligia had never seen anyone so beautiful, and she could not believe her own eyes, for she knew that Poppaea Sabina was one of the vilest women on earth. She knew from Pomponia that she had brought Caesar to murder his mother and wife. She knew her from accounts given by Aulus' guests and servants. She had heard that statues on her to her had been thrown down at night in the city. She had heard of inscriptions and writers of which had been condemned to the severest punishment, but which still appear on the city walls every morning. Yet at sight of the notorious Poppaea, considered by the confessors of Christ as crime and evil incarnate, it seemed to her that angels or spirit of heaven might look like her. She was unable simply to take her eyes from Pompeia, and from her lips was wrested involuntarily the question, Ah, Marcos, can it be possible? But he rose by wine, and as if were impatient that so many things had scattered her attention and taken from him, his words said, Yes, she is beautiful, but thou art 100 times more beautiful. Thou dost not know thyself, or thou wilt be in love with thyself, as Narcissus was. She bathes in ass's milk, that Venus bathed thee in her own milk. Thou dost not know thyself, Oseleme. Look not at her, turn thy eyes to me, Oseleme. Touch this goblet of wine with thy lips, and I will put mine on the same place. And she pushed up nearer and nearer, and she began to withdraw toward Acte. But at the moment silence was enjoined, because Caesar had risen. The singer Diodorus had given him a lute of kind called Delta. Another singer named Tepnos, who had to accompany him in playing, approached with an instrument called Nabilium. Nero, resting the delta on the table, raised his eyes, and for a moment silence reigned in the triclinium, broken only by a rustle as roses fell on the ceiling. Then he began to chant, or rather to declaim singingly and rhythmically, to the accompaniment of the turlets of his own hymn to Venus. Neither the voice, though somewhat injured, nor the verses were bad, so that reproaches of consciousness took possession of Lycia again, for the hymn, though glorified the impure pagan Venus, seemed to her more than beautiful, and Caesar called himself with the lower crown of his head, and the lifted eyes nobler, much less terrible, and less repulsive than at the beginning of the feast. The guests answered with a thunder of applause. Cries of "O heavenly voice" were heard round about. Some of the women raised their hands and held them thus, as a sign of delight even after the end of the hymn. Others wiped their tearful eyes. The whole hall was seething as in a beehive. Poppaea, bending her golden-haired head, raised Nero's hand to her lips and held it long in silence. Pythagoras, a young Greek of marvellous beauty, the same to whom later the half-insane Nero commanded the flames to marry him, with the observance of all rites, knelt now at his feet. But Nero looked carefully at Petronius, whose praises were desired by him always before every other, and who said, If it is a question of music, Orpheus must at this moment be as yellow from envy as Lucan, who is here present. And as to the verses, I am sorry that they are not worse. They were I might find proper words to praise them. Lucan did not take the mention of envy evil of him. On the contrary, he looked at Petronius with gratitude, and affecting ill humor began to murmur, "Curse fate, which commanded me to live contemporary with such a poet. One might have a place in the memory of man, and on Parnassus, but now one will quench and kindle in sunlight." Petronius, who had an amazing memory, began to repeat extracts from the hymn and cite single verses exalt, and analyze the more beautiful expressions. Lucan, forgetting as it were his envy before the charm of the poetry, joined his ecstasy to Petronius' words. On Nero's face were reflected delight and phantomness, vanity, not only nearing stupidity, but reaching it perfectly. He indicated to them verses which he considered the most beautiful, and finally he began to comfort Lucan, and tell him not to lose heart, for though whatever a man is born that he is, the honor which people give Jove does not exclude perfect for other divinities.